Here we are. So, little history lesson. What happened on July 4th, 1776? Trump was not elected. All right, July 4th, 1776. Independence Day, right? Declaration of Independence was read. If you've ever been to Boston and take the Freedom Trail, you can follow the trail and see the balcony that they read the Declaration of Independence from for the very first time. It's kind of a cool moment. But when we think about the Declaration of Independence, there are many authors, but there's one author that kind of comes to the mind when you think of the Declaration of Independence. Anybody?
Jefferson.
Yes, Thomas Jefferson. All right. Why Thomas Jefferson? Why does he come to our minds? Huh?
The signature?
That's John Hancock. All right, John Hancock was the guy who wrote the big signature at the end. So whenever you go to your bank and they're like, "I need your John Hancock," that's because he had the biggest signature on the Declaration of Independence. But Thomas Jefferson authored a unique line in the Declaration of Independence, where he was the main driving author behind the line. Anybody? You thought you were coming to church and it turned out to be social studies, all right? All right?
Inalienable rights to God.
I'm just going to help you out, all right? Because I couldn't do it either. So we hold, there you go, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with the certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right? So that is the famous line in the Declaration of Independence. And a lot has gone into, a lot of people have taken a lot of fascination with this line specifically, because whenever we make laws in our country, we make them based off of the Declaration of Independence and understanding its meaning. And so different people take different understandings to what it is, to what these inalienable rights are of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right? The Supreme Court will change laws out of their interpretation of this. They will change the laws of the country depending on their interpretation of this verse. Depending on the court, if it's more liberally minded or conservative minded, they'll change their interpretation of this. All right? Many people have gone back and said, okay, Thomas Jefferson was the author of this. What was his inspiration? And when you study Thomas Jefferson, which I did for the purpose of just this only, and I know nothing else about him, but he was a self-proclaimed Epicurean. And what that is it's a certain philosophy. And this philosophy kind of promotes two big things. One is that happiness is found through a self-rule or self-sufficiency. Okay, that happiness is found through self-rule or self-sufficiency. Essentially what that idea is saying is that I rule myself and I am sufficient enough to know what makes me happy. All right? So that's what this Epicurean philosophy believes, one of the tenets. And another one is that it promotes the philosophy of individualism. Okay? Individualism. That the government shouldn't determine too much on a broad scope, that it's the individual who understands themselves and understands what makes them happy. While there are many different theories that go behind the meaning of this verse, okay? I think it's fair to say that we live in a society that loves happiness, okay? We love happiness. And because we love and chase after happiness, we are a society that has a lot of stuff. Okay? We accumulate stuff, and we are by far kind of the richest nation that there is, the richest country in the world. So much that even our college students here, who have zero money to their name, have more than everybody else in this world. All right? They survive off of going to any club that offers free pizza, right? That's how we all make it through college. We all walk that path, nothing to be ashamed of, all right? But that speaks to how well endowed our country is, okay? That even the brokest of us finds free food. Right? But this pursuit of happiness, which has motivated and been a driving force in our countries, hasn't always been used for the greatest good. Okay? We see minorities, groups who are shouting out and pushing their small weight with big voices to implement laws that change our country. All right? Under the pursuit of happiness. Okay? Now, we can spend a lot of time talking about this pursuit of happiness on the country level, all right? But what's always our challenge during this series? Our challenge is to look internal, okay? To evaluate ourselves, all right? And we're able to look at this country and say, this country is on a path that isn't so great, probably because of the decisions that we're making on a countrywide level. But again, what are we doing? Now, instead of looking at the country and saying like, oh, you just want your happiness, so you're pushing laws to be, go in your direction, what about our personal pursuits of happiness? Because we all have personal pursuits of happiness, right? There are things in life that just make us happy. Give you a couple examples, and I'll start by picking on myself, all right? Just to make you think like I'm not pointing at you, pointing at me. All right, what? I'll leave football out this week. Right, we're on a bye week. I got nothing to talk about. Other than we're not losing. All right. So I'll give you an example. I have been a Starbucks Gold member, okay, since 2011. I have not missed one opportunity to renew my Gold membership by getting enough stars out of the year to renew my Gold membership at Starbucks. I can make the same cup of coffee at home for 1/10 of the price. All right? And I mean that because I buy the Starbucks coffee and I figured out like a pretty good ratio to do it at home where I'm pretty satisfied, and actually the guest I had over yesterday said it was a very nice cup of coffee. All right? But when I make it at home, it cost me very little. But I still go to Starbucks, okay? I still go to Starbucks and I pay $2.75 for the same cup that cost me almost nothing at home. Does it make sense? No, logically, you'd be like, make a coffee at home. But it makes me happy. It makes me happy. I like going to Starbucks, meet up with people, have a cup of coffee. It makes me happy, all right? Give you another one. I like to run, all right? And as I've gotten involved in my running, I like to monitor my runs, all right? I have a phone that is too smart and can tell me a lot about my runs. But as I got like kind of, in my eyes, advanced in running, all right? I didn't want to hold the phone while I was running. I don't like attaching it to my arm and all the different things, so bought a watch. That watches where I go, tells me what my heart rate is, all right? Logically, did I need the watch? Outside of the watch tells me my heart rate where my phone doesn't, okay? Do I need the watch? No. But it makes me happy. It makes me happy, all right? Enough about me, all right? Who here, let's talk about shopping, okay? And I don't have a gender in mind, all right? You can pick the gender in your mind, all right? How many of us have gone to the mall to shop for clothes when we have absolutely zero clothes in our closet? Nobody, okay? When we use the, I got nothing to wear. Are we being honest? No. I'm sure if somebody else came into my closet and be like, wear this, all right? They'd find something for me to wear. Is it logical? Is it truthful for me to say I got nothing to wear? No. But when I go shopping, it makes me happy, all right? Let's talk about eating. You can go out to a restaurant. Get your food, and as you're eating your food, it's not really done the way that you want it. Okay, just like a little bit too dry, the meat's a little bit too tough. All right, waiter comes around, you happy with your food? Nah, really was expecting this, stuff like that. And he's like, oh, well here, let me get you a new plate. What's happening to that plate? Garbage. We know it's going to the garbage, right? And we know that knowing how much poverty is in this world. Is it logical that we say, yes, get me a new plate? Is it the truth that like, oh, I just can't eat this? No. But if we're honest with ourselves, it kind of makes us happy if we're going to spend $15 to eat what we want, to eat what we like. Why? Because I like to be happy. All right, go on vacation. I'll skip that one for later. All right, let's look at this one. All right, I have a bunch of examples. So, while relationships and feelings, okay, and that sense of intimacy, hold on. While we are chasing the ideal relationship where there's a lot of intimacy, okay, we are chasing something that makes us happy. We're not alone in that chase. All right? But when we have a pattern of short-lived relationships and mutual interests that frequently turn sour very quickly, all right, and I don't want to deal with it, what do? I dump the relationship. Why? It's not making me happy. But I'm setting myself up for repeating that pattern, where I'm constantly chasing my happiness, and when it doesn't go the way I want it, I dump it. So we could go on with a bunch of examples, all right? But I think we get the point. We don't always function based on truth. We don't always function logically. We tend to function based on our pursuit of happiness. Everybody does it in a different way. But we all pursue happiness to some extent. And happiness is not always bad, but frequently happiness brings us to a little bit of a fork in the road. All right? Because sometimes our happiness and our pursuits of happiness don't always make sense or logical, okay, or common sense, or lead us down a path of integrity. So a lot of times, like, we're standing here at the crux of a decision, and we see happiness leading down one road, but then our subconscious tells us, but I'm kind of veering off of the truth, okay? I'm not being truthful with myself, and I'm just pursuing happiness. Or if I lean towards happiness, I'm going to violate my integrity. Or it just doesn't make sense what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway, okay? So sometimes our pursuit of happiness brings us to a fork in the road, and that fork is the balance, okay, between pursuing things that make us happy versus walking a road that actually makes sense, truth, integrity, and the application of wisdom. So, what happens when we find ourselves at this fork in the road of the things that make me happy, the things that I want, versus the things that are, I need to express wisdom. I need to exercise common sense. What happens with our minds and our hearts? All right? Whenever we're in this fork in the road, what happens is that we step into this heart-mind connection. Our heart frequently tells us happiness. All right? Our mind sometimes tells us that's not a smart move. All right? So what happens? Our heart tends to tell our mind that we need to justify our decision for happiness. Okay? Our heart tends to tell our minds, go find me justification to choose the happiness. Alright? So our brains go to work thinking, how do I justify my happiness? How do I justify it? How do I make it logical? How do I bring common sense to it? Alright? We essentially become this guy to ourselves, a used car salesman. All right? Our heart is trying to tell our mind that this is the best road for us. This is what we want to do. All right? I'll give you an example. I love going on mission trips. All right? I've been on one in a while. But I love taking younger kids. Because nothing brews romance like a mission trip. Okay? We go on mission trips, and without a doubt, we come back, and somebody always falls in love on a mission trip. Right? Somebody always falls in love on a mission trip. And what happens? But we met doing God's work. Okay? We were serving together, we were serving hand in hand, and it was divine. Right? What's happened, like on a middle school trip? All of a sudden, we found the person we're going to marry. Right? Happiness, like here in the heart, has gone against common sense and wisdom, but has sent the mind saying, but we met in front of God. My leaders know this, okay? What is wrong with going down this road, right? If you have fallen in love on a mission trip and it worked out and you're married, okay, there's some exceptions, but let's just talk about the general that happens, right? But our hearts send our minds looking for justification that choosing this path actually makes sense. All right? Here's another one. Find yourself on a vacation that's been a little bit tight, so you went on a budget vacation. The best way to do a budget vacation is by signing up for one of those timeshares. All right? Where you get the 3 nights and 4 days at the resort for like $200, and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. But you always got to go through the sales pitch at the end. So you're going through the sales pitch after you had a really nice vacation. Okay? The budget vacation you really couldn't afford, so you did the sales pitch. All right? And then finally you get to the end, and your mind starts thinking, gosh, I've had a really nice time. I'd like to come back here. And the salesperson saying, like, oh, how much you spend on vacations. They start to do a little math sheet in front of you. And they start to say, for $10,000, you can take this vacation 3 times out of the year. All right? And after the 5th vacation, you will have paid it off. So your mind starts thinking, oh, I really like this place. The pool was great. The food was great. Easy to get to. I didn't have the money to get here. All right? But all of a sudden, this idea seems pretty good. And in the long run, I'm saving. And you know what? I'm going to give it to my kids. Like, when I have kids and they need to go on vacation, I will give it to them. I'll let my family members use it. All right? So our heart is seeing what we want, the happiness of coming on vacation to this nice place, sends our minds to go justify making the decision. So, what's going on here when we do this? And we do this over and over and over in our lives. We create a cycle of self-deception. And this cycle of self-deception, where we tell our heart tells our mind to go find justification, to make decisions that make us happy, does 2 big things to us. One, we eventually don't know what's actually good for us. Okay? We haven't put any restraints on our heart. Okay? We've given our heart free rein to go and tell our minds, like, justify this. We ultimately get to a place where we don't know what's good for us. And when we don't know what's good for us, it's essentially saying that we're lost in life. Because we don't know what the next decision is that we should make. Because we're so geared on making the decision that makes us happy. But we know that when we chase after happiness, from decision to decision to decision, we end up lost. We end up lost in life. So what are factors that play into this self-deception? Is that we eventually have this fear that we're not going to get what we want. And when we live with this fear of not getting what we want, we tend to live a life that is outside of our means. We live a life that is outside of our means and outside of our limits. And that is a very, very lost place in life. How do you begin to walk back when you are uncertain of where you are? How do you begin to make decisions that bring you back when you are uncertain of where you are? If you've ever been lost driving, and it was just one of those trips where your phone died, you're don't have a map, you just take a left, take a right, take a left. And then you've gotten to a place where you don't even know what the street sign is. You don't know if you're facing north, east, south, or west. Somebody gives you a map. You look at the map and you're like, I don't even know where I am on this map. I can't even pinpoint myself on this map. And I'm supposed to find my way back home? Well, when we cater to this cycle of self-deception, when we cater to our pursuits of happiness, that's what happens in life. We get to a point where we don't know where we are. We don't know what is good for us. We don't know what decisions to make. And we just sit there, making more decisions that make us happy. But that's not where we want to stay. We know we shouldn't be there, but our subconscious tells us, like, it's okay, everything will be fine. Or, I'll get through it like I always do, it's not a big deal. Those are the things that we tell ourselves when our subconscious starts to rise up and like, we get that internal alarm that says, like, I'm lost in life. But we're too lost to really know how to change directions or make decisions that gear us in a new direction. We talk ourselves down. It'll be all right. It's not as big a deal. I've gotten into problems before, I'll get out. But we have to figure out how to navigate these situations. We have to figure out how to avoid them, but when we're there, we have to figure out how to navigate out of them. But what does that entail? That entails that we learn to navigate our hearts in order for us to understand and not end up in this cycle of self-deception. We have to learn to navigate ourselves. Because we live in a society that prides itself on like luring people out, to living like outside of our means. We have 5-hour energy drinks. We got Starbucks on every counter. We got cell phones that make us reachable at all hours of the night. All right? We have jobs that have no boundaries, that just make us work and work and work. Like, none of them are going to bring us back in and tell us what's good for us. So, we need to learn to navigate our hearts. What do we do with our hearts? When we look back, okay, in the Old Testament, we're going to take a quick look at Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a prophet in the Old Testament who was known as the weeping prophet because his life was miserable. His life was absolutely miserable because as he continued to talk and as he continued to prophesy about the things that would come, nobody wanted to listen to him. This is at the end of the kingdoms, where the kingdoms were just in such a moral decay and decline that the exile was just around the corner. The kings were just getting worse by the enthronement, and Jeremiah was there just speaking truth. And King Joachim was one of the kings that lived at the same time of Jeremiah. And King Joachim, if anybody hated Jeremiah, it was King Joachim. Because every time Jeremiah would say, correct your ways, straighten your paths, King Joachim would ignore it. And despite the declining condition of the kingdom, the declining relationship between the Israelites and God, King Joachim kept on saying, it'll be all right, I'm going to ignore Jeremiah. And Jeremiah saw this pattern over and over. Not just with this king, but many kings and the people as well. He saw this pattern where he was speaking the words of God. He was sharing truth. He was telling people to really reflect on themselves. But he saw a king and a nation who didn't want to do it. And after seeing it time and time again, Jeremiah came to a bit of a resolution to make sense of it. He said, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Jeremiah just kind of tossed in the buckets that the heart is just, it's evil. It doesn't say the truth. And we're all fooled by it. Is that the right interpretation of this? Is that the right conclusion? Or are we potentially misinterpreting this, if that's the conclusion that we come to? Jeremiah can just kind of saw the situation getting worse and worse and worse, and despite speaking common sense, despite speaking wisdom and truth, and walking with integrity, he saw everything crumble. So he said, heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? If Jeremiah's conclusion, okay, or theory is correct, then we're all in trouble. It's a really dangerous conclusion on our behalf to take Jeremiah's verse right here and come to our own conclusion that truly the heart is beyond cure, and the heart is deceitful, and there's nothing that we can do. Nobody can understand it. And the reason why I'm saying that, if that's what we come to from reading this verse by Jeremiah, we're in danger. And I don't think that that's what Jeremiah, the ultimate conclusion he was coming from, because this was verse 9. Let's read verse 10. It says, I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, to give every man according to his way, according to the fruit of his doing. God looks at our hearts. God looks at our minds. And out of what's going on between our heart and our mind, God is giving to us. So if we take a 50% of the equation and say, oh, 50% of this equation, the heart, is just bad, let me wrap it up in a ball and throw it away, we're in trouble. Okay? That means we only got 50% left, which is our brain. And let's be honest, I think this series has uncovered that we're all making wrong decisions. And Solomon, just 2 weeks ago, when we meditated on his verse in Proverbs, says, lean not on your own understanding. So we have to be able to reconcile and understand what Jeremiah said, what this verse says, and also what Solomon said, which was, trust in the Lord with all your heart. So I don't get it, Bible. Is the heart deceitful, or do I trust in the Lord with all my heart? Which one is it? Do we have a contradiction? Do we have a contradiction? Because I think some people would read and be like, okay, one prophet says the heart is deceitful, another prophet says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. What am I going to do with my heart? Deceitful, trust in Him. What do you want me to do? Is it a contradiction, or is it a contrariety? Okay, is it a contradiction, or is it a contrariety? All right? What's a contradiction? Contradiction is a statement or proposition that denies another statement or itself and is logically incongruous. Okay, I'll read the definition again. A contradiction is a statement or proposition that denies another statement or itself and is logically incongruous. So is the Bible contradicting itself in these verses? What are we going to do with this heart of ours? Or is it a contrariety? What's contrariety? Contrariety holds two aspects of an issue in balance and in tension without violating the logical congruency of either. Okay? So contrariety holds two aspects of an issue in balance and in tension without violating the logical congruency of either. Alright? So just because Jeremiah is saying the heart is deceitful, and the next verse it says, God's searching the heart and the mind and going to give accordingly, and Solomon is saying, trust in the Lord with all your heart, we have to be able to balance these. Okay? I'll give you an example. James Stewart is a Scottish preacher of the 20th century. Is one of the best quotes which capture this idea of what a contrariety is in the person of Jesus Christ. He said, he was the meekest and lowliest of all the sons of men, yet he spoke of coming on clouds of heaven with glory of God. He was so austere that evil spirits and demons cried out in terror at his coming, yet he was so genial and winsome and approachable that children loved to play with him, and little ones nestled in his arms. His presence at the innocent gaiety of the village wedding was like the presence of sunshine. No one was half so compassionate to sinners, yet no one ever spoke such red-hot, scorching words about sin. A bruised reed he would not break. His whole life was love, yet on one occasion he demanded of the Pharisees how they were ever to expect to escape the damnation of hell. He was a dreamer of dreams and a seer of visions, yet for the sheer stark realism, he has all of our self-styled realists soundly beaten. He was a servant of all, washing the disciples' feet, yet masterfully he strode into the temple, and the huckstuckers and money changers fell over one another in a mad rush, and the fire that they saw blazing in his eyes. He saved others, yet at the last, himself he did not save. There is nothing in history like the union of contrasts that confronts us in the Gospels. The mystery of Jesus is the mystery of divine personality. So we see in this quote contrarieties, things that at face value seem like they would contradict each other, but when you look a little bit deeper, are held in beautiful balance with one another. And so our challenge is to look at these ideas. Is this heart deceitful? Or do I need to trust in the Lord with all my heart? And work through it. The reason why it's so important is because Solomon said, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Just to complicate it a little bit more, okay? Guard your heart. Keep your heart with all diligence. Work at your heart, because out of it come the issues of life. If our heart is the foci of life, okay, the focus of where we experience life, okay, then it will never stop feeling. Because until we die, we will experience life, okay, through relationships, through events, through series, through situations, both good and bad. We experience life. How do we know we experience it? Because we feel something in response to the experiences, to the relationships. Okay? There's something you feel when somebody backstabs you. There's another thing you feel when you hug somebody you love. All right? But we experience those. Where do we experience them? In our heart, the emotional center. But how do we go to keep our heart with all diligence? What does that even look like? And I want to take a little bit to kind of bring some form to what it is, what does it look like, or what do we even call it, to begin to keep our heart with all diligence. And it's a word that I've shared before, okay, I've talked about before, but it's the idea of emotional health, okay? Emotional health is an idea or a term that is used to kind of begin to form what it is to keep your heart with all diligence. All right? Emotional health is being aware of what I am experiencing in relation to the world around me, in relation to the relationships I have, to the excitement, to the failures in life, everything. Okay? We experience them, and we know we experience them because we have emotions. But just because we feel our emotions in response to the world doesn't mean we are healthy. All right? So let's break it up a little bit more. What is emotional health really concerned with? So emotional health is the ability to kind of look at our emotions, name them, recognize them, and manage them. Okay? It allows us, emotional health allows us to develop the capacity to express our thoughts clearly, to understand what's going on inside of me, and to respond as a result. Emotional health and having good emotional health is responsible for having and maintaining close relationships with another person. It's being able to respect and love others even though we carry different beliefs and not making everybody believe what I believe. What falls under emotional health is the ability to accurately look at ourselves and assess ourselves and say, this is my strength, this is my weakness, I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. All these things fall under this idea of emotional health. But let me give you some examples, okay, that fall under emotional health as well, all right? When somebody doesn't want to come to church because they want to avoid the comments of, where have you been? We missed you. Right? Because it makes them feel uneasy. And so to avoid the comment and avoid feeling that uneasiness, they don't come. Okay? When your child misbehaves in public, and for fear of how you appear to everybody else, you beat your kid. Or you grab him by the arm and you give it to him. That's emotional health. That process of seeing how you feel in response to your kid misbehaving, thinking, what does everybody else think of me? Am I a good parent? Am I a bad parent? Processing like, how am I going to show that I'm in charge to my kid? And the decision that we make in that situation, that's emotional health or unhealth. All right? When you see somebody else doing something that gains them attention, okay, and from your own place of loneliness, you start to copy because you want attention too. That process, that's emotional health. When you ask someone to do something for you, but they don't do it the way that you want, and they kind of mess things up. But you struggle to tell them what they did was wrong. Because you don't want to upset them. They did you a favor. Like, who am I? They're just helping me out. Like, I don't want to say anything. Even though inside you're so broken because whatever it is you asked them to help you with just turned out so bad. But you don't know how to approach them. That falls under emotional health. You have a pattern of losing your temper because that's what your parents did to you. But you can't see that. You can't see that you lose your temper. Because you've met the family status quo. That falls under emotional health. The list is exhausting. But without emotional health, and bringing this idea in, essentially we're victims. We're victims to the environment around us. Because what will happen is we will experience things, it will make us feel in a certain way, and we will react without knowing it. We got anybody in the Bible who was unhealthy? Sure, we got plenty. Let's take a look at Saul. All right? Saul was a perfect picture of somebody whose heart deceived him down a wrong path. Okay? Let's take a look at this. So King Saul was the first king in the history of God's people. And his kingdom and his reign started off okay, but about 2 years in, he made a mistake, offered a sacrifice when he shouldn't. Okay, so he was kind of on thin ice. And God was taking the kingdom away, but Saul got a second chance. Samuel was a prophet in those days. And Samuel went to Saul, and we pick up in 1 Samuel 15, and he gave Saul these instructions. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant, nursing child, ox, sheep, camel, and goat. Okay? Very clear instructions. Even though we may look at it and be like, okay, that's a bit brutal, these are instructions from God. Okay? This is what God commanded Saul. So Saul went, all right? If we look at verse 9, this is what Saul did. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good, and were unwilling to utterly destroy them, but everything despised and worthless, that they utterly destroyed. So clearly, like when we line up these two verses, Saul got clear commands, went, and did something else. Okay? And so eventually, Samuel comes in to see, what did Saul do? So Samuel comes in, and Saul sees Samuel coming. Then Samuel went up to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed are you of the Lord. I have performed the commandments of the Lord. But Samuel said, What then is the bleating of sheep in my ear, and the lowing of oxen which I hear? And Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we've destroyed. Saul tries to argue that he did what was right, that he followed the commands. But Samuel was no pushover. Samuel knew what the command was. Samuel looked and said, Saul and the people made a decision that was different than the commands of God. All right? Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. So Samuel called him out. He said, it's great that you brought all these, but it's not what God asked you to do. So the question, why did Saul do it? If it was so clear, if it was common sense, the wisdom was, listen to God and the prophet. Okay? But Saul was on a happiness quest. Saul wanted to do what was happy. Okay? And Saul realized something. He wasn't aware of what his heart was going through. He wasn't aware of the emotions that he was going through. But finally, at the end, he realized it. And Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandments of the Lord in your word, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. And finally, Saul woke up. Saul realized what was going on in his heart. It was late. It was too late. Okay? But Saul realized what was going on in his heart. He was realizing the pressure that he was feeling from other people. He was realizing that he wanted to gain the popular vote from people. He wanted to make them happy, and if they were happy, then he would be happy. But wisdom was teaching him something else. Wisdom was speaking something else. But Saul wasn't concerned with truth and wisdom. Saul was concerned with happiness. So Saul's heart deceived him. And Saul chose happiness. But happiness came at a high price, because the kingdom was ripped from him. So, are we so different than Saul? If we're honest with ourselves, we're all looking for happiness. And we all try and justify it. Saul justified it. We justify it. Choosing the other road, choosing the other path, isn't easy. It requires that we engage our heart. It requires that, we learn what these verses are saying. We learn how to bring them, these two contrarieties of like the heart is deceptive and God's looking at my heart and judging my heart. Like I need to bring these two together. And the only way that we're going to do that is by beginning to engage our emotions, by beginning to look inside our hearts and say, what's going on here? All right? But our emotions take time. Our emotions take time. Until we die, we will have a constant state of emotions flooding into our lives. There will not be a day where you don't feel something until you are dead. Okay? Even if this day is crummy, you have felt something about this day. Okay? Think about all the times you have just the slightest emotion towards anything in life. In one day. Do you spend time thinking about it? No, we're too busy. We're running from one thing to the next. So we don't think about the small things. But the problem is, we've become so busy that we don't even think about the big things. We don't even have enough time to really deal with the big things that are weighing heavy on our heart. And it takes time to do that. And it hurts to do that. Because we don't like to sit, as I was sharing earlier in the sermon today, we don't like to sit in our sorrow and our grief. But those are the things that we need to deal with. And so, although like the last part isn't going to be focused on this, I do want to revisit some of the things that we've said in this community and re-emphasize why we say them in this community. That's why we need rhythms in life. Because when we don't have rhythms in life, when we don't have normal periods of time to stop from life, then we have no period of time to engage our emotions. We have no period of time to look at our hearts. We have no period of time to look at our hearts, not with our own lens, but with the lens of God. We have no time to come and say, I'm really angry about this, God, and I will pray about it until we find some resolution together. When we have no rhythms. We have no rhythms in a day to pray, that our prayer is always victim to the to-do list of today. Okay? But not just looking at the day, but looking at our week to week. When are we going to stop from moving? Stop from producing, stop from doing things in order to sit down and engage our emotions, engage our pains, engage the struggles that we have in our marriages, with our kids, with our friends, in our community. The Orthodox life is so rich in like the jewels that come when we bring in silence and solitude. When we slow down enough, when we distance ourselves enough from the world and from the noise, from social media, from our jobs, we allow ourselves time to engage the heart. Because out of it flow the issues of life. When we don't engage it, we'll be a victim to it. And when we're a victim to it, we'll find ourselves lost. Because all we know how to do is do what makes us happy. But we need to get into the habit of guarding our hearts. We cannot run from our emotions. We cannot deny them. That's inhumane. It's actually inhumane to run and deny our emotions. We cannot let them rule over us. Instead, we must let God rule over them. Okay? We must let God rule over them. So we have to learn to build practices in our lives that give us the space to take what we are feeling, bring them to prayer, bring them to our journal, bring them before God, and say, God, you help me decipher. You help lead me in what I should do with the pain that I'm feeling, with the hurt that I have, with the disrespect that I feel, with the misunderstanding that I have. Like, I don't want my emotions to lead me. I want you to lead me, but you will lead me through my emotions when I come to you. We have to be courageous enough as individuals to look inside, to be bold enough, and see that if I'm going to find that intimacy with God, this is the way to do it. This is why David stands alone. Because he brought everything that he was feeling, and he wrote it for us in the Psalms. The good, the bad, the ugly, the I want that person to die. Like, it's all in the Psalms. But he brought it before God, which is why 2 weeks ago, when Peter was talking about David in the cave, and the men saying, God has delivered Saul into your hands, David was emotionally out. He was able to navigate that situation. And we all face situations like that. But when we distance ourselves from dealing with the issues of the heart, our heart is deceptive. When we leave it alone, when we don't engage it, when we don't bring it and put it before God, when we don't intentionally dive into it, our heart will be deceptive and it will lead us in a wrong path. But when we're intentional and we are patient enough we are able to guard our hearts, because out of it flow the issues of life. Emotional health is the guarding of our hearts that guides our path. Emotional health is the guarding of our hearts that guides our path. Any questions? Stand up, please, pray. Dear Father, the Son, and the Spirit of God, and we thank you, Lord, for our blessings. Thank you for this day. We ask you, Lord, that you would please give us the strength and the courage to look at our hearts. And to not deal with our hearts alone, but to bring our hearts to you. To trust that you will lead us through, that you will teach us, that you will enlighten us, that you will give us the grace to not be led by our emotions, but to lead our emotions to you. And then from there, you will lead us. Help us to not lean on our own understanding, but to trust you in all things. Through the intercession of all your saints who please you from the beginning, hear us as we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. We praise you, Son, Lord, thy kingdom come. Now, Lord God, the Father, and grace of his only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, who gives the Holy Spirit, be with you all. Go in peace. The Lord be with you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.